Ambassador, this 10-page birthday letter you wrote Jeffrey Epstein.
I fell for his lies. I honestly have not the faintest idea how he died. Whether he was murdered or whether it was a suicide.
Welcome to Harry Cole's Saves the West. Peter Mandelson is one of the West's great survivors, a former British minister, a lord, a European power broker and a spin doctor extraordinaire, a man never far from the headlines. But in a political comeback worthy of President Trump himself, he's back. He's UK ambassador to Washington. Now, as we await President Trump's second historic state visit to Britain, Ambassador Mandelson has his toughest assignment yet, keeping the peace between an unpredictable US president and a Labour government struggling with a sick economy, runaway immigration, and mounting attacks on free speech. So what could go wrong? Well, let's find out, because he's here with us. Lord Mandelson, welcome to Save the West.
And it's very nice to be on Save the West. Congratulations for coming here.
Thank you, indeed.
Taking Washington by storm.
You're very kind. For years, the so-called guardians of the liberal order have promised us stability, growth, security. Instead, we get decline, decay, denial, whatever you want to call it. The West is wobbling. You've acknowledged that in a speech. You've spent your life, really, your adult life, at the heart of the establishment, that liberal order. What went wrong?
I think what went wrong was that we took for granted that we could carry on running a global economy, running a political system at home, engaging in a seemingly normal relationship with China as they were eating our lunch. We took for granted that what we had basically grown accustomed to in the past would just carry on indefinitely, and it hasn't. After the Cold War ended, we just thought, well, peace has arrived and we don't have to spend anything more really on defence and security, certainly not as much as we needed to do. We thought we could run a completely open economy, almost a borderless economy and country, but people, I'm afraid, grew very tired of Chinese and others, as I said, eating our lunch, hollowing out our industry, trading unfairly, but also they became very alarmed by the movement of people. Immigration seemed to be unchecked and uncontrolled, and that also became a problem. And so we've been through a big political backlash, and that's something that President Trump recognized and understood in the United States, and it's what I believe Keir Starmer understood and got his mandate to put right when he was elected last year.
But haven't the British people been trying to give a mandate to governments for nearly a decade now, from Brexit through the 2019 election to Keir Starmer?
And none of them delivered, did they?
But is Keir Starmer going to do? How is Keir Starmer going to deliver? We've got stagnant growth. Living standards are slipping. As we say, mass migration is creating all sorts of tensions. How is he going to turn it around? And what's he going to do? Because it doesn't seem to be working so far, does it?
I think that what Keir Starmer and his government are doing for the economy in three respects are absolutely right. One, they're bringing financial and political stability.
Are they, though? We look at the bond markets this week. It doesn't exactly scream stability, does it?
Compared to what we've been through, we have financial stability, which is the envy of very many other people in Europe and elsewhere in the world. Secondly, they're introducing reforms of our planning and regulatory systems which are badly in need of a deep-seated overhaul, something we've been waiting for a long time. And thirdly, they're raising levels of public and private investment. And I know that, and it's my job here in the United States to promote Britain, to project Britain and the stability and the opportunities for investment that exist, and that's exactly what I'm doing.
Let's talk about that. How's that going on the economic front? As we both would accept, the UK economy is in a fairly critical condition. It's not blaming anyone in particular for that. It's been in a sorry state for some time. Growth a third of that of the United States. How is it working together with the United States going to help that when it's obvious to anyone that can see that tariff policies set out by this administration are going to have a direct negative impact on the British economy?
Well, the United States is our single country biggest trading partner. It's the biggest source of investment. I mean, there is a golden corridor of trade and investment that flows back and forth across the Atlantic. And my job is to help expand that corridor and to make it work even better for both our countries.
But the United Kingdom is in a worse state in terms of economic relations with United States since last November.
Worse relations.
Yes, well, with 10% tariffs, flat tariffs. You know, we may not have the worst deal
Harry,
compared to other people,
Harry,
but we're in a worse situation than
Harry,
we were. It's not back to square one, is it?
We got the best and the first trade deal.
Got the least worst.
We
got the least worst deal.
I'm sorry, I don't accept that. We now have just 10% tariff coverage of all our main industrial sectors, and we have quotas, for example, for our automobiles
Set at 100,000
that need to be landed here and sold in the United States. So don't give me any of this.
But
we're just as bad as everyone else.
Last year
we are not. Hold on. We're in a much better position as a result of that trade deal we negotiated with the United States.
Well, take the car, take the automobile industry, where we see lots of Range Rovers. You look around New York, you look around LA, you look around Washington, you see lots of British-made cars, Bentleys, Range Rovers, and the like. We imported 100 Aston Martins, perhaps. We imported 120,000, roughly. It may have been 118,000 luxury cars to the United States last year. The tariff carve-out is only for 100,000, so 20,000 of those cars are going to hit by 27%.
You're splitting hairs. We have a quota. We have a quota for our cars being imported into the United States, which broadly corresponds to the trade that we have grown over very many years. And if we need a bigger quota, then I'll go back and renegotiate it.
You said in your speech at the weekend that Brexit, you were not necessarily a born Brexiteer, but you're certainly sounding like a convert these days, that Brexit enabled us to further strengthen our ties with the United States. Keir Starmer and yourself have dressed up this tariff deal, response deal, as a sort of Brexit trade deal. It's not, though, is it? It's not the great deal we were promised as voters in the United Kingdom to have quota-free and tariff-free access to the United States, similar to the deal that was forged with the EU after Brexit.
The point I made in my speech at the weekend was that when we left the European Union, everyone said that the United States would value us less. They would talk to us less. They would listen to us less. The opposite has turned out to be the case under this presidency. That's all I was saying.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that Brexit's been a wonder for the United Kingdom.
That would be a
obviously.
story.
Nobody says that.
Well, I don't think it's been as bad as some people say.
Not even Nigel Farage claims
implementation rather than
that Brexit has been a success for Britain. But I was making a point about the United States, which is our biggest, closest defence, security, as well as trade and investment ally and partner. And everyone said when Brexit occurred, we'd go down the tubes here in the US, and the opposite has happened.
There is growing speculation, I should say, and you love speculation, I know you do, but that the tech deal could be signed as soon as the state visit. Is that your understanding? I know you've been beavering away behind the scenes. There is room for improvement. This is the deal that was announced by Keir Starmer back in July. That is, the basis of a deal. That there are more strands to come. Is that correct?
Yeah. New critical technologies are going to transform our economy, our society, how we live. And if we get it right, that revolution, then it's going to enhance our lives and improve our quality of life. But it has to be got right. And what we've got to do in Britain is to make sure that we beat others in this technological race. We're a science-rich nation, but we will advance and do very much more for ourselves if we're benefiting from a US partnership and US investment with US technology companies feeling that they can come to Britain, that they're not being shown the door, that they are being welcomed on our terms, obviously, so that they can play their part in advancing our economic interests. And that's good for America, and it's good for Britain.
I'm pleased you brought up the technology firms, because they don't like, and this administration don't like our digital services tax. They don't like the fact that the online safety bill brings them into scope to be prosecuted and pursued by Ofcom within the United States firms in the United Kingdom. Is there going to be a carve-out for firms as the President has requested?
Nobody's asked for any carve-out of US technology firms from our digital legislation.
So it's the 2%, the digital services tax is going to...
You're talking about a tax. I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about...
I wrapped them both up, yeah.
Well, they're two very, very different things, obviously. And as far as the tax is concerned, that will be a matter for negotiation should the United States ask us to put that into the trade negotiations. They haven't done so yet.
But so it's potentially on the table you're willing to put
Well,
it on
there
the
are many things that are potentially on the table. And by the way, there are many things that we want potentially
Yes.
to put on the table to ask of the United States that will advantage us. That's what trade is about. You know, I scratch your back, you scratch my back. You know, trade has to be fair, it has to be reciprocated, it has to be balanced. And that at its heart is the sort of trading relationship we have with the United States.
Another issue that could potentially be a fly in the ointment of next week at the state visit, it's linked to this in some ways, tech firms especially, the growing fear in the United Kingdom that free speech is under direct attack. We saw the arrest of a comedian, Graham Linehan, when he landed in the United Kingdom last week for something that he tweeted while in Arizona. He's an Irishman in Arizona. He lands at Heathrow and he's detained by the British police. That sends an appalling message to the world about what's going on in this country.
I think everyone in Britain, including the police, are going through different stages of working out how to apply this legislation, whether it's proportionate, how to apply it, etc. And there's no magic solution. We're creating a completely new digital economy and a digital society. Now, obviously, what we want to do is to make sure that people who commit crimes offline can't simply go online and commit those crimes without being chased and checked by the police and by the authorities. But this has spilled over into all sorts of areas of social media posting and whatever. And I think probably through trial and some error, we will come to review how this law is operating in practice and how it can be applied better and proportionately in the future.
But no one's suggesting that what Graham Linehan, apart from it appears 5 armed policemen, is suggesting that what he did was making a joke. Is that now a crime? Is it not the fact that it should not be within the scope? It wasn't proportionate, was it?
Of course not. But this is a matter, we don't have in our country, politicians and ministers and governments deciding, you go there, or you've got to be brought in for questioning over here, or you've got to have the long arm of the law put on your shoulder. That's up to the police. It's up to the prosecution authority, and at the end of the day, it's up to the courts. Parliament does create the rules.
Yes.
It creates the legislation, and if there are problems in the operation of the legislation, then I'm sure that Parliament will take another look. I'm not saying that is the case. I'm just simply stating an obvious fact that if there are problems in the operation of this legislation, then I'm sure the appropriate authorities and ultimately Parliament will examine that.
But you accept there clearly is a problem when people are being pulled off flights in the United States. The President of the United States said he's shocked and surprised by what he's hearing from the United Kingdom. He's heading there shortly. Are you expecting him to raise it?
Look,
has he raised it with you?
He has not raised it with me. Nobody in the administration.
Well, J.D. Vance raised it publicly.
No, he has not raised that issue or that case with me. We have had a broader discussion, certainly, about the advent of social media and how you legislate for and how you manage the risk of harms or online crime, how agencies, how the police can pursue criminal wrongdoers online, how you do that, how you manage that. Yes, that is a broad discussion that we've had, and I think it will be a continuing discussion because there are no simple open and shut answers to how we manage what is a completely new set of challenges for us with the advent of social media and so much activity taking place now online.
Another issue that I find fascinating is the fact that Sir Keir Starmer and Donald Trump were broadly elected within a couple of months of each other.
On very similar mandates, by the way.
A howl of change, absolutely.
And a mandate for national renewal.
Yes.
Both of them.
And Donald Trump has all but closed the southern border to illegal migration. He has done things which make some people, especially liberals, very queasy. Alligator Alcatraz, for example, being one of them. But it seems to be working. There has been a grounding of the halt of catch and release of people coming into the United States illegally and then being released into the communities. However, on the other side of the coin, Keir Starmer has seen small boat crossings rise 37% year on year. The stats, most latest stats, 30,000 of them have crossed. 30,000 illegal migrants have entered the United Kingdom across the English Channel this year alone. Obviously, one method is working and the other isn't. Where you arrive in the United States, you're turned back, you're detained, you're deported. You arrive in the United Kingdom, you're given a preloaded debit card and put in a 4-star hotel.
Yeah, that's
Is there not something that Britain can learn from the Trump administration on how to deal with this issue?
Well, I don't accept your characterisation of the government's approach. I think Keir Starmer and his colleagues have made it absolutely clear that unchecked illegal immigration has to stop, and they are taking action to do so. They're mounting measures, and if need be, they will introduce new legislation in order to curb this illegal migration. It's a very tough challenge that they've inherited after very many years in which all this has gone seriously wrong. It's not going to be turned around overnight.
But how come America have been able to turn it around so quickly? And they have. The numbers are undisputable, and yet Britain can't. Well, what is hampering us from taking the same drastic action that the Trump administration have taken?
Well, it may be that a physical land border, as the United States has, is easier to close.
Well, you could argue that being an island is actually harder to reach.
You would have thought so, wouldn't you? But it turns out not to be the case for successive governments. But they're getting on top of it, and they will introduce measures that they believe are necessary and will be successful to curb illegal immigration.
Let's talk about where the United Kingdom and the United States, I hope, are actually on the same page, and that's the brutal 3.5-year conflict in Ukraine. I know you've been intimately involved in the discussions that are going on behind the scenes. President Trump appears slightly reluctant to push the button, shall we say, on the secondary package of sanctions that hit countries that are still trading with Russia. He said at the weekend he was open to the idea, but it's gone a little bit quiet since then. It's been nearly 3 weeks since the Alaska summit. It's all gone a bit quiet about this mythical meeting between Zelensky and Putin.
Yeah, but you know why that's the case.
Well, you tell me. Why?
You know that's the case because Putin's dragging his feet. He's stringing out this whole process so that he can bomb more of Ukraine, send hundreds more drones into Ukraine, destroy more buildings and people's homes, and kill more people.
Well, that's exactly my point.
What he wants to do is to occupy as much territory as he can.
So then sanctions now.
So that when the negotiation eventually takes place, he'll be starting from a point of greater occupation of Ukrainian territory.
Then in that case, he's playing the West like a cheap fiddle, because at the moment he's allowing to do this with impunity. Why not sanctions today? Why not do it? Bring that trap down.
And one of the things that the president said when I was in the White House this afternoon was that we need to look at our armament supply to Ukraine. We must look at our missile defences. We must see whether we're doing enough for Ukraine, and I'm glad that he did.
The president was elected on a mandate to end the war in Ukraine. His base, his supporters, lots of Congress don't want to see another weapons package. It sounds to me like you're suggesting that he's open to one.
I don't speak for the president.
No, I know you do, but in terms of
United States,
all
I can do is to reflect 3 things. One, that he believes that Ukraine needs to be defended. Secondly, he wants a negotiated end to this conflict and has said so repeatedly, and he wants Putin to come to the table along with Zelensky and have that discussion, to have that negotiation. Yes, he is considering further economic pressure on the Russians in order to force Putin's hand, and at the end of the day he wants a durable peace, and settlement for Ukraine that will be guaranteed its security primarily by the Europeans putting in the measures that are required, and which the United States is prepared to back up. That's what he said in public. And we welcome that.
What's he said in private?
He said exactly the same in private what he says in public. That is the president you have.
Are you detecting any sense that in frustration, if the Russians continue to thumb their nose at the West and continue to drag this out, as we've discussed, that the Americans could pull stumps and say, look, sort it out yourselves?
That is a matter for the president, and I don't speak for the president, and I don't interpret the president. When you are successful in getting him to come onto your program, you can ask him directly. But one thing I would say is this, that he showed a great sense of, frankly, risk and nerve in bringing Putin to Alaska.
Was it the right thing to do?
Yes, it certainly was the right thing to do, even if it hasn't delivered full and immediate results. Everyone will be saying if he hadn't bothered, if he hadn't taken the risk, then he's simply sitting back and doing nothing. And then on the following Monday, he was right to invite President Zelensky to come to Washington with European leaders and give that support and that assurance to Mr. Zelensky and the Ukrainian people as well. But this is not going to be, this whole conflict is not going to be turned on or off like a light switch. I'm afraid that is not what is going to happen. This is a very difficult, brutal, ghastly, intractable war. And I give him full points for trying to bring it to an end.
Are we any closer to peace than we were pre-Alaska?
We are no further back, and I think that what Putin has heard is that the president is not prepared to trade Ukraine's sovereignty, Ukraine's democracy and freedom, and its land with Russia over the heads of the Ukrainian people.
I want to read a quote from your speech last weekend. The president may not follow the traditional rule book or conventional practice, but he is a risk taker in a world where business as usual approach will no longer work. Other presidents would have thought it endlessly before descending into an analysis paralysis. Did you have anyone else in mind when you were talking about an analysis paralysis? You seem to compare...
I just think that in the United States there have been times when different presidents have spent a lot of time weighing up, doing a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats analysis. Should I, shouldn't I? Should we use America's power to intervene here? Should we instead stand back? And by the time you finished analysing something, you end up sort of doing nothing. And that's the contrast with President Trump. He does take decisions, he does take risks, and he uses appropriately American power when it's needed.
Would you like to see politicians slightly closer to your heart take similar levels of risk and be bolder? Say Sir Keir Starmer, for example. There's a lot of...
In what respect?
Well, in a lot of respects, in the fact that he's been in power for a year, he's on minus 59 in the opinion polls. Clearly, his style of technocratic, easy for you to say, technocratic safety-first leadership is not having the results he wanted.
Well, I don't accept that's a ridiculous characterisation. But look, I'm Britain's ambassador in the United States. I'm not America's commentator on what's going on in Britain, in London.
It's a good line.
Thank you.
But we will be in London next week for the state visit. We will be intensely looking at the comparing the two governments. What has Sir Keir Starmer got wrong to be in this position so far? There must be something. If you just look and compare him to Donald Trump, they're two leaders who've basically been in power for the same amount of time. One's on plus 55 in the opinion polls and one's on minus 59. What is Keir Starmer getting wrong? It can't just be comms or policy. What is the fundamental issue with his government?
I think that what Keir Starmer and his colleagues are doing is trying to, very hard and with some success, but it's going to take time, to turn round a loss of economic firepower in our country that frankly has been growing for the last 10 years. That is not an easy thing to do. But are they going in the right direction, in my view? Yes, they are. Are they adopting the right policies? In my view, yes, they are.
Okay.
But they have got to be given time to work. And by the way, also, they've got to be determined and persistent enough to see those policies through.
I think I don't think I'm going to get anything else further out of you on that one. Let's talk about the state visit, though. Second state visit for a world leader, second state leader for a world, unprecedented. People calling you the Trump whisperer.
I'm not the Trump whisperer.
Yeah, you are. You're there. You were saying how handsome you were in the Oval Office. You were, beaming. You were trying to sell him a car at one point. I think at one point you were almost holding hands. You've developed a great relationship with the president.
He shook my hand. He said I had a beautiful accent. And I said, you've given us such a good deal on cars. How about taking advantage of a discount on...
What do you make of him, though, on a personal level? You'll obviously see him much closer than, we see the president a lot, but always often through the lens of a television camera. What's he like?
I'll tell you what I found this afternoon. I spent an hour in the Oval Office this afternoon.
Is that why you were late for the interview?
With him. Sorry about that.
That's all right, you're here now, that's what matters.
The meeting was a bit delayed and then it went on for much longer. But we were talking, amongst other things, about trade. We were talking about the technology partnership that I hope will be agreed next week. We talked about the state visit, which is very much looking forward to. We talked about tariffs, including tariffs on whiskey, by the way.
What's the most surprising thing?
Which we want to see some change in.
What's the most surprising thing about Donald Trump that you wouldn't necessarily expect the public to see, that you get to see in your extremely privileged position?
That he is in private very much as he is in public. He's not
lively.
He's not really different.
Yeah.
And I think the point about his relationship with the American people is that almost every day he starts a fresh conversation.
I mean, sometimes he starts 10. As a journalist, it's almost impossible to keep up. Some of us have to move here to keep up with it.
Or 10 with his voters, with the American public. And it is like a continuous conversation. I mean, what is in his head, what he thinks, very direct way he has of speaking, holds no secrets with people. Everyone
and you think
knows,
there's method to that?
Everyone knows where they stand with Donald Trump, like him or loathe him.
Indeed.
And, you know, there are plenty of people in both those categories. All I would say is about him is that I think people like his directness. I think they like the fact that, you know...
Do you like him?
He speaks about American society.
Do you like him?
I can't help but admire him because he is an extraordinary political
You're not answering
phenomenon.
the question there.
Secondly, he's a very gracious person. And look, he has a very direct way of doing business.
Do you like him though?
I enjoy the relationship that our countries have, and I love the way in which I am able, on behalf of Britain, to conduct that relationship.
That's a very Peter Mandelson
and to make sure that we get into the room, that when we're in the room, we're listened to in the room, and that we don't fall out of the room.
Well,
that's my job as ambassador.
Moments of maximum danger. Your new boss, there's a foreign secretary in town, Yvette Cooper. She has said some pretty fruity things about the president in the past. She's racist, aggressive, misogynistic, hateful, dangerous.
We all have.
She attacked Theresa May for rushing to invite him on a state visit, which is exactly what Keir Starmer's done. Are you on the same page as your new boss?
Everyone has said, to a greater or lesser extent, in their moments of
is he forgiving?
Haste. Has he forgiven?
Have
He's
you,
a very
have
forgiving
you, have
president.
you told him?
I mean, for example, he forgave his own vice president, J.D. Vance.
Very good point.
Who was pretty brutal about him before he was chosen as his vice presidential candidate.
So you're fully on board with Yvette Cooper as the new foreign secretary. She attacked websites like Breitbart for amplifying Donald Trump's hate. You did an interview with Breitbart just a few days ago, didn't you? Did you know about that?
I don't know. Look, I don't know in what context she said that or when she did. All I know is that websites like Breitbart are followed by millions of Americans, and therefore I can't ignore them.
Ambassador, you've been in the news of late. This 10-page birthday letter you wrote Jeffrey Epstein, admittedly 5 years before his first conviction. It makes
over 20 years ago.
5 years before he was convicted. It makes a pretty cringeworthy reading. I have two questions on that, really. How does it feel to see those words blasted across the world? And how do you think it feels to those people who are fighting Epstein for justice?
I find them very embarrassing to see and to read, but as you say, they were written before he was indicted. But I just feel two things now. One, I feel a tremendous sense, a profound sense of sympathy for those people, those women who suffered as a result of his behaviour and his illegal criminal activities. And secondly, I regret very, very deeply indeed carrying on that association with him for far longer than I should have done.
How long was it?
Oh, it was a matter of years after I initially met him, and I regret very much that I fell for his lies. I fell and accepted assurances that he had given me about his indictment, his original criminal case in Florida. Like very many people, I took at face value what he said. With hindsight, with fresh information, many years later, we realized that we had been wrong to believe him. He's a charismatic, criminal liar we now see, and I regret very much indeed. I felt it like an albatross around my neck since his death in 2018 or 19, when it was. I feel a tremendous sense of regret, not only that I met him in the first place, but that I continued the association, and I took at face value the lies that he fed me and many others.
So after he was first convicted, first indicted, you continued a business and personal friendship relationship?
It was not a business relationship.
Not a business relationship. You didn't do any business together, even informally, introducing to people, doing people, scratching backs, as you put it earlier. Nothing.
He never. He operated in a financial and business way, way above my level. Yes, he was always saying, "Would you like to see so and so? I've got this friend. I'm having this dinner. Would you like to come?" Or he was a prolific social networker and a political networker. That is true. But I would say this to you, Harry. During all the time I was an associate of his, I never saw the wrongdoing. I never saw any evidence of criminal activity. I never sought, and nor did he offer any introductions to women in the way that allegedly he did for others. Perhaps it's because I'm a gay man. Perhaps when I knew him,
in all those years you saw nothing untoward.
Perhaps
no whispers on the wind.
Perhaps when I was associating with him those years ago, as I did with my then partner and now husband Ronaldo, we never ever saw any evidence or sign of this activity, which has since come to light. That's why I feel so profoundly upset by what is now has been now revealed about what he did to women, and why I feel profoundly upset that I was taken in by him and continued my association with him for far longer than I should have.
But does that naivety on your part not make your current job as a very senior diplomat quite difficult, if you're willing to accept that you were essentially conned?
I lived in London. I'm a Brit. He lived in New York. He was an American. Perhaps if I had been in closer proximity...
Well, you stayed with him on a number of occasions, as you admit.
I did in the early years. That's certainly true. And now I regret it. I regret being taken in by him, as very many other people do. But it was 10 years later, when he was federally prosecuted, that people suddenly learned of what he had been up to for all those years.
Donald Trump, President Trump, seems reluctant to clear the decks on this one. Would you be, in a personal capacity, be supportive of the Epstein files, so-called Epstein files being released?
That's not a matter for me. That's
as a personal matter, as someone who's potentially named in them, would you have any problem with them being published?
I don't believe I'm named in Epstein files. I have no doubt at all that there's a lot of traffic, correspondence,
emails,
exchanges,
letters
between us. Absolutely. And we know those are going to surface. We know they're going to come out. We know they're going to be very embarrassing. And they know that I'm going profoundly to regret ever having met him and been introduced to him in the first place. But I can't rewrite history. What I can do is express my profound sympathy for those who were badly treated by him. And secondly, I can accept that I continued my association with him for too long.
Have you discussed this with the Prime Minister, and do you retain his full support on this matter? And have you discussed it with the President?
I haven't discussed it with either the President or the Prime Minister, and I hope that I'm doing a good enough job as Ambassador here in the United States to continue to warrant and command his confidence.
One final question, Ambassador, if I may, and this is controversial, but it's a view held quite widely if you look at public polling in this country. Do you have any reason to believe that Epstein's death was anything other than suicide?
I honestly have not the faintest idea how he died, whether he was murdered or whether it was a suicide. All I know is that with all the information that we have about this dreadful, dreadful man, I wish that I could remove that blot. He is like a sort of piece of muck attached to my shoes, which I find it very difficult to kick away. But I will do it. I will do it. But I can only do it by first of all acknowledging how much I regret ever having met him in the first place, and how much I regret deeply continuing the association with him.
Ambassador Mandelson, thank you for that.
Thank you very much indeed.
Don't go anywhere. That was Save the West. Subscribe, never miss an episode.